Hello, everybody. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. John Schmelk, Paul Dottino with you, taking your phone calls at 201-939-4513. You can tweet us out on Twitter as well if you like. We have Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch joining us from Ohio to talk Ohio State prospects with us today. And then, Paul, we have tomorrow Joe Schoen's pre-draft press conference, where we'll try to scrounge some nuggets. That'll stream around noontime on all of our Giants YouTube channel and Giants app. I bet Giants.com. It'll stream somewhere, and then we're gonna pop up and stream on YouTube and Giants app right after that's over. It'll be Dottino, Sitek. I might join in and we do a little three-way conversation on what Joe Schoen has to say at his press conference tomorrow. But we only have 3 more schools to go. We have Louisville and LSU on Thursday. But we're going to talk Ohio State prospects today with friend of the program from the Dispatch out there in Columbus, Bill Rabinowitz. Bill, what's going on, man? Good to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you guys. How are you?
Yeah, Bill, you've been with us every year for a long time now. And we never have a shortage of prospects to talk about coming out of Ohio State. And we joked last year how so many guys decided to go back to beat Michigan. Well, they didn't quite do that, but I think they'll take the consolation prize of the national championship just fine. And now all these guys basically are hitting the NFL this year.
Yeah, it's probably going to be 15 Buckeyes taken in the draft. It's quite a class they've got, and like you said, they came back to win 3 things: to beat Michigan, to win the Big Ten championship, and to win the national championship. I mean, their motto last year was natty or bust. Well, the first 2 got ruined by that late November day in Columbus.
Indeed.
But they regrouped and went on a playoff run that was quite impressive.
It seems to me the best way to go about this, Bill, is to go by position groups, because you guys have multiple guys at multiple positions. For example,
they were the most talented team in college football, and it shows. It's that simple.
Well, Lance Zierlein, right, of the NFL media, has 15, as we just heard Bill say, draftable players in this year's draft. So why don't we just go right to the offensive line with Jackson and Simmons, the 2 guys up top. We understand the versatility of one because the other guy got hurt. But those 2 guys, if they're both healthy and everything is good and fine, which guy do you think is going to have the better pro career, and why?
Well, that's a good question. Who's going to have a better pro career? I think they're going to be different. I think Donovan Jackson's a guy that you just plug in, and he's your left guard or right guard, whatever, for 7, 8 years. I think Josh Simmons has the potential to be a real star. But his track record's a lot shorter, a lot smaller than Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson was a 2-time, really 3-time All-Big Ten player. As you alluded to, when Josh Simmons got hurt in the Oregon game, Ohio State basically out of desperation moved Donovan Jackson to left tackle, where he hadn't played since high school, and played really well. His first test was at Penn State against Abdul Carter. Anyone who's ever been to a game there knows how loud it is, which meant Ohio State had to go with a silent count. A silent count in your first start at left tackle against Abdul Carter is a recipe for disaster. He did give up 2 sacks. One of them was his fault. One really wasn't. But still, to have held his own against a player that good in those circumstances was quite impressive. Josh Simmons, everyone calls him a freak, that he just has the quickness and the strength, the size. He's everything you want in a left tackle. Now, he went through ups and downs too, but he came from San Diego State, where the year he started there, he had, I think, the most penalties in the country, like 19 penalties or something crazy like that. He really cleaned that up at Ohio State. He was inconsistent his first year in 2023. He's off to a phenomenal start in 24. I mean, players told me, I'll give myself a little plug here. I'm writing another book on Ohio State on their season, and so I've done a lot of interviews. And basically what the other linemen told me was they didn't even worry about Josh Simmons. It was like, okay, we don't have to worry about Will Howard's blind side because Simmons is out there. And when you don't even have to think about a position, a player, that's a pretty comforting thing, especially at left tackle.
Yeah, Bill, just one quick follow-up on Simmons before Paul jumps to the next kind of position group here. He took such a big jump from last year to this year, at least in my opinion, and feel free to disagree in your answer if you don't think that's true. And you mentioned this, it's just such a small sample size this year. It was only 5 games and then 20 snaps in the 6th against Oregon. But the bigger issue for me is that 3 of those games were against Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. Right. So you only have 2 games against 2 big schools, Michigan State and Iowa, neither of which have, top-notch draftable pass rushers. So I agree. If he continued on his trajectory and finished the year playing the way he did in the first 5 games, I think he's a top 5 pick. I think he's the first offensive tackle taken. But we know how a guy, we all watch football, right? A guy can be really good for a couple games and then tail off. So what do I take out of the small sample size for Simmons, given this was like his first year of real elite play?
And that's a legitimate concern, and that's why he's not a top 5 or top 10 pick. That's why he's considered to be middle of the first round or later, because he didn't go against Abdul Carter, and that would have been a great matchup, right? I mean, then you know. So a lot of it is projection, but when you look at the size and the foot speed, the quickness, the arms, the long arms, he was just dominant last year when he played, and you could see where he was the year before when he was good but inconsistent. And he told me that he just worked his ass off in the offseason to really know the offense inside and out, to really maximize his potential. And he did. He looked really good in those first 5 games, but it is a fair point to say we don't know how he would have played against elite competition because he just didn't do it.
All right, let's talk about Henderson and Judkins, the 2 running backs who are quite different in terms of their size, their physicality, and how they play. They're going to be guys who have to go to the right system in order to maximize their usage.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think – look, people will say Travion Henderson's a better outside runner and the Quinshon Judkins is better between the tackles, and that's true. But it's not as if Travion Henderson can't run between the tackles or that Judkins can't run outside. Of course they can. Judkins is more of a, give him the ball 3 times, he's going to get you a first down. Right. Whereas Henderson is you give him the ball and it could be a touchdown. They don't fumble. Neither one of them is a fumbler. Henderson in particular is incredibly good and willing as a pass protector. There was a play against, I think it was Akron actually, where he picked up a blitz and just pancaked the guy. And even before Will Howard threw the ball, Travion was like jumping up and down in excitement. so he really likes that part of the game. We all know his speed, his breakaway ability. Against Texas, he had that screen pass that was basically a throwaway play, turned it into a touchdown. It really changed the game. Quinshon Judkins came to Ohio State because he wanted to win a championship, and he also didn't want to carry the ball 30 times a game like he was doing at Ole Miss. And so I don't think either one of them ever had a game in which they carried more than 17 times. I don't think Henderson had a game in which he carried more than 12 times. But it made them fresh, and they looked fresh at the end of the year. Quinshon Judkins had that huge 70-yard run against Notre Dame. They're both reliable, and they're good guys. They're team players. And I think the fact that they agreed to share the load tells you that they're team players.
Henderson had some injuries in his past, though. Do you think that's why the distribution of carries became critical for his efficiency?
Yeah, I think so. He had an injury a couple of years ago where he was a broken bone in his foot, and he also had some kind of ligament issue. And at the time, I had just broken my right pinky, stubbed my toe. And it was just incredibly painful for me to do anything. And yet he kept trying to play with his injury, which was worse. And for the life of me, I was like, how is he doing it? I could barely walk, and this guy is trying to play college football. He's had other injuries in his career. This was really the first year in which he was healthy, fully healthy. So, yes, I don't think he's a 20 carry a game guy in the pros. But you know what? Very few are anymore. I think the tandem system that NFL teams are going with is smart and effective. It's just the game is too violent to have one guy carry the ball 25 times a game and expect them to get through a season.
All right, let's jump over to the 2 edge rushers. Explain to fans that maybe have not watched a ton of Ohio State what differentiates, in what ways are Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimalu different players?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know what? They are pretty similar, really. I mean, I think JT is probably a little quicker, but that's about it. They're both good against the run. I don't think either one of them has the first step kind of quickness that, let's say, Chase Young did or the Bosa's. I don't think they're that way as pass rushers. They're more kind of grinders and just, high motor guys that get sacks that way. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure I've got a great answer for it, other than they're both just very solid players. I'm not sure that either one's going to be a superstar in the league. I mean, I kind of think of Jack Sawyer kind of the way I think of Sam Hubbard, who just retired after
that's a good one
for the Bengals.
Yeah.
Probably a little more talented than Sam Hubbard, but I think they're both going to be very, very solid NFL defensive ends. Sawyer, they're kind of looking at a little bit as potentially even an outside linebacker, 3-4 kind of thing. Again, I don't really study that kind of stuff because I cover Ohio State. I don't really get too concerned about what their NFL roles will be, but I've seen that, and Sawyer said that's what teams are looking at him potentially as. I still think he's primarily a defensive end. But I could see, like, I always think of Pittsburgh where they're 3-4. He could, can I picture him as an outside linebacker in that?
He's one of those tweeners.
Yeah,
I get you. All right, how about Hamilton and Williams, the two defensive tackles? And John knows how much I like Tyleek.
So do I. I'm with you on that.
I know. I'd love to see him there at the top of the second round, and I think he could be. And if he is, it's a good pick. Both guys, though, could use more pass rush skills, though, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tyleek Williams has exceptional burst. For a guy his size, 330 pounds, whatever it is. I mean, his first step is so quick that he just beats guys off the snap. He's strong. He's stout against the run. As a pass rusher, he's okay, but that's not his forte. He's more of a guy that, if the pocket breaks down and the quarterback has to step up in the pocket, he'll get you. But he's not a guy who's just got, an amazing pass rush move or something like that. He's much more of a run guy. I think Ty Hamilton is I think there are a couple of guys I think are really underrated as Ohio State prospects. I think he's one of them. He was so good as the nose tackle, nose guard as they call him, just held up the line, willing to have that thankless role. I mean, he got overshadowed so much by Sawyer and Tuamoloau and even Tyleek Williams, and never batted an eye. It was interesting. Mickey Marotti, the Ohio State strength coach, said that he calls Ty Hamilton Don Corleone because he runs that defensive line. Jack Sawyer, is a loud guy and gets a talker, and he's kind of the face of that defensive line. JT Tuamoloau is a five-star guy, got a lot of attention. Even Tyleek did. Hamilton was a guy who was kind of under the radar, but he was the guy that they all thought was the key to the defensive line. I think whoever gets him in probably the mid-round is going to get a steal.
That's a good one. All right, I want to jump over to the offensive side of the ball now. Would we be talking about Emeka Egbuka differently if he hadn't played next to two of the best wide receiver prospects that we've seen in college football in the last 10 years, in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, I'm sure that would be the case because he probably would have gotten more balls. But he's a guy who's, again, I think he's a guy who's going to play 10 years in the league, probably be a number 2 receiver, and just be really, really good for a long time.
And good at everything, right? I mean, he can catches, he blocks. He's so good.
There's nothing that's off the charts in terms of the measurables with him. I mean, he's fast, but not the fastest.
Right.
He's strong, but not the strongest. He's big, but not the but he does everything well. He's a very mature guy, very thoughtful, very smart, team player. Obviously, I know he mentored Jeremiah Smith. He doesn't need a whole lot of mentoring, by the way, but he was that guy. And whenever it was 3rd and 6 or something like that, I'd always look for Emeka Egbuka. Okay, where's he? Where's number 2? And think that's probably where the ball's going to go because he was so reliable in that role.
Can we start calling Ohio State Receiver U?
Might as well be.
Oh, they do.
I mean, they really know how to churn them out.
But yeah, that's what it is.
Well,
it's amazing the pipeline they've had.
How about the guy who throws them the ball? Will Howard, for me, had such a terrific college playoff. And I'm going to be honest with you, Bill. I wasn't thinking much about him. And then I watched the playoff games, and he really impressed the living heck out of me. But then after we get to the combine, and I'm all right, let me go back and look at some of the video, and I'm like, not as good. His best ball was in the playoffs. So what has to happen for him to be that kind of player when he gets to the NFL? Because he didn't show it throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think Will Howard has a lot of things you really like in a quarterback. He's got very good size, 6'4", 235. He's really smart. He's very charismatic. He wins over teammates quickly. Just got one of those personalities that people gravitate toward. He's a very accurate thrower, especially short and medium range. His deep balls, it took him a while. I don't know whether it just took him a while to get used to Ohio State receiver speed because he gets underthrowing guys. And they'd be, Jeremiah Smith, okay, I'm open, waiting on the ball. He would have, in the biggest games, often like one or two throws that just kind of were like, what was that? An interception or an off-target throw. I will say in the Michigan game, he was injured more than people knew at the time. So I would probably discount anything that happened in that game, although the first interception happened early. It was essentially a pick six. The guy returned to the one, I think. That was just a bad throw. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but it's strong enough. I think that if he's in the right system where they ask him to do what he's good at, then he can be a successful player. I think he could eventually be a starter, but I think at the very least he'll be a guy who would be a really, really valuable backup.
All right, I want to go to the defensive backfield here, Bill. And again, thanks so much for joining us. Denzel Burke, if he's not the definition of how volatile cornerback play can be, the way his career is kind of slinkied back and forth again and again, I'm just going to put it this way. What happened to him this year? Because I thought heading out of last year, he definitely hurt his draft stock by going back with the way he's played. What should an NFL team expect from Denzel Burke, and why do you think he had a down year?
Well, he didn't have a down year. He had a down day, and it was a very bad day against in a very prominent game. Like the first Oregon game, he just got lit up. It was just one of those games. He didn't get much help from the pass rush. They didn't sack Dylan Gabriel once in that game. He was left on an island against very good receivers. But look, he had a bad game. There's just no denying it. And I think that's what people remember largely about his season. But the rest of the year, he was pretty solid. He's not the biggest or the fastest guy. He might not have all the measurables, but he's a very competitive guy. He's a very willing tackler and run support. He's got a lot of self-confidence in a good way. He's not cocky, but he's very self-confident, which you need in a cornerback. The last thing you want a cornerback is someone who doubts himself all the time. That's not Denzel Burke. Even after the Oregon game, and again, I talked to him for the book, and he was like, "No, I was fine. Maybe it took me a day or two, and then I was fine." And the rest of the year, he was good. He's an aggressive cornerback, but he plays with fundamentals. He's scrappy. Is he a day one starter? Probably not, but I could see him going to training camp and really impressing. He was not one of Ohio State's top recruits in his recruiting class, and he started as a true freshman. He had, a very good freshman year, a down sophomore year. He admitted he got a little complacent, a very good junior year, and then a good senior year, except for the Oregon game.
Let me go to Ransom, the box safety.
Mm-hmm.
The notes I wrote on him were downhill. Clearly reads plays very well when he comes in on run fits. And also he's actually one of those guys who likes to punch at the ball like Peanut used to do in the NFL. Yep. Those were things I really liked. But what I didn't like was he didn't wrap up very well. I don't think he had great range or coverage skills. So he's got to be a system safety, maybe the third safety in a three safety package when he gets to the NFL, because you can't stick him too deep in the back. That's not going to work too well.
I think that's probably pretty fair. I think that I would say he's a little bit better in coverage than maybe you're giving him credit for, but I think you're right about his strengths. He is a very willing hitter. His dad told me that when he was growing up, when Lathan was growing up, they called him Lights Out Lathan. Because
Lights Out?
He just Lights Out Lathan. He would, knocked the guy's lights out.
Okay.
And his name, if you're a little trivia thing, his name is a combination of his mother and father's name. His father's name is Nathan, and his mother's name is Linda. So, Lathan. He's a guy who overcame some really serious injuries. He broke his leg in 2 places in the Rose Bowl, the game when Jackson Smith-Njigba went nuts. And then he had the tightrope surgery after Liz Frank as a junior, and came back and really was a leader. He was a guy who would challenge other players in a good way. He's a guy you want on your team. Yeah, he might be limited a little bit, as you alluded to, but guys like that are winners, and you want those guys in your locker room.
We're talking to Bill Rabinowitz, covers the Ohio State Buckeyes for the Dispatch. Want to go to a Jersey guy, Cody Simon, out of Jersey City. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a couple different people tell me, and you mentioned Hamilton being one of the underrated players in the draft. Many people have told me they think Cody Simon is very underrated, and they think he's going to be a much better pro than people are giving him credit for. What did you see from him? As I believe he was the green dot guy for you guys, right? As someone that kind of ran the defense and kind of did all that stuff on defense to get everyone lined up as your inside off-ball linebacker.
Yeah, he and Sonny Styles were the green dot guys. Cody Simon was a backup for most of his career, not because he was like backup quality. It's just you had players who were really good in front of him. Tommy Eichenberg was in front of him. And Cody Simon might have been the starter, but he hurt his shoulder a couple of years ago. And Tommy Eichenberg, that was, again, before the Rose Bowl. And Tommy Eichenberg, I think, had 17 tackles in that Utah game and staked his claim to that job and kept it. Cody Simon, maybe the best thing, pretty good thing anyone could say about somebody, that Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, said he thinks that Cody Simon will be president of the United States someday. And I said, shouldn't he aim higher?
I'll be honest with you, Bill. I'm not sure he needs that stress. I'm not sure that's the job he wants, to be totally honest with you.
Well, probably going to get some hate mail now. The Cody Simon is, he is the kind of guy you want your daughter to marry. He's just people told me, Mick Marotti told me, he just never makes a mistake. He just never does anything wrong in terms of his, off-field life, in terms of just how he approaches the game. I'm sure you can find people who are more athletic, that maybe are faster, but he is just what you want. I mean, he is a guy who is solid, and he became a star late in the year. He went from being a solid player to being a difference maker. He had the first against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I think the first Oregon play after Ohio State scored, they tried to run Jordan James outside. Jordan James is a really good running back. And Cody Simon diagnosed the play and tackled him for a loss. And you're like, oh, okay, here we go. I forgot, it was the Indiana game when he had a series where he had, I think, a pass breakup and a sack and maybe a tackle in open space. Again, he's a mid-round guy. Probably, that's probably as high as he would go, is the mid-rounds. But he is definitely a guy you want on your team.
I got one more guy who fits that description, Bill. Hancock, the corner, third-day guy. But if some coach gets him, some really good DB coach gets him and gets his technique polished up and more consistent and gets him away from some of the grabbiness, I think he could make himself a pretty good pro corner.
He was the one that I was thinking of other than Ty Hamilton and Cody Simon. I've always thought he was underrated. They kind of moved him around a little bit late in the year, where he had been essentially a slot corner, and they moved him back to safety. That was done basically give Caleb Downs more freedom to make an impact, because Caleb Downs early in the year was almost an afterthought because teams weren't going at him. They weren't throwing deep a whole lot. He just kind of felt like you're wasting him. I mean, Caleb Downs, if he were in this draft, would be a top 10 pick for sure, maybe a top 5. So they did that to kind of allow Caleb Downs to play to his potential. But Jordan Hancock was up to the challenge, whether he was at a nickel corner or as a regular safety. He's good. I mean, he's a really solid player. Again, kind of got lost in the mix because you have so many others that are going to be drafted higher than he is. But again, as a fifth round, sixth round guy, boy, I'd jump at him.
All right, final player for me, Bill. Seth McLaughlin, the center. I know he's a good player because one of our writers here, Dan Salomon, who's a big Ohio State fan, was apoplectic for like 2 days after he got hurt late in the year and thought it was going to sink the season. What would an NFL team be getting with him?
Maybe the smartest guy on their roster. I mean, he graduated from Alabama, I think 2.5 years. He got his master's in, the next year. You talk to him for 5 minutes and you realize how smart he is. He's a guy who was the lowest rated recruit in Alabama's recruiting class. And in fact,
wow.
He said Najee Harris thought he was a walk-on. I can't.
What?
Yeah. When the one day and he just hadn't put on the weight yet, and Harris said, you're a walk-on, and Seth was like, no. So later in the year, after Seth had proven himself, Najee Harris goes up to him, puts his arm around him, and say, okay, you're legit. He solidified Ohio State's offensive line, which was very, very shaky in 2023. He came in and won the job and just ran the show and became a leader on the field and off the field. He told me his rehab is going at least on schedule, maybe even ahead of schedule. He expects to be fully ready by the start of training camp.
Good.
And so, I don't think the health is going to be, that much of an issue.
All right, then final question. Aside from Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, I'm taking the easy, low-hanging fruit off of your table, Bill, because we both know both those guys are going to be phenomenal players next year for Downs, the year after that for Smith. Yep. Who else should be on our watch list for Ohio State 2026 NFL draft that could emerge this year that we should be keeping our eyes on?
I think Sonny Styles is a potential first-round pick. I mean, linebackers have been kind of devalued lately, but I think that he has a chance to be the first linebacker taken next year. I don't know who else is out there, so there could be some stud I don't know about, but he's that good. He went from safety to linebacker last year. His body is filled out. He'll be the leader of that defense. Davis Igbinosun, with one major caveat: if he can cut down on the pass interference calls, he's got everything else you want. But he's not. You can't do what he was doing last year and getting those calls all the time. I think I looked it up, and he had 19 of the 44 defensive penalties. It was something insane like that. Mm-hmm. And I talked to him again. I talked to him for the book. I said, "Hey, Davis, you got to work on this, or what?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I know." In fact, he volunteered toward the end of the year to put oven mitts on, or winter mittens on,
the boxing gloves, right?
In practice, just to prevent himself from grabbing. It was only partially successful. I mean, we had one against Notre Dame that it was like 3rd and 18. I used to say, if it's 3rd and long, just throw it at Davison's guy because you have a decent chance to get in the pass interference call, and that's what happened. So if he can cut down on that, then he's a first-round talent. He's aggressive. He is fast. He is competitive. When he got to Ohio State as a transfer from Ole Miss, he would show up in the weight room and say, "I'm taking your job. I'm taking your job. Taking your job." Actually said this, And so, he's not afraid of anything. He's not going to back down. So he's a guy that I would think, again, if he can clean up pass interference calls, is going to be a high draft pick. And defensive line, they're all too new for me to say. Other ones aren't draft eligible this year. Caleb Downs, obviously. On offense, the offensive line, I think Ethan Onyanwa, the transfer from Rice, has a chance to be a really good player. Again, I haven't really seen him play.
Yeah.
You don't get to see a whole lot in spring practice, but what I saw was impressive. He's a big guy. He's a smart guy. Reserve judgment, so I see him play, but there's somebody to be on the radar at least. I think Carson Hinsman, who was the center in 2023 and then lost his job. He didn't even play in the Cotton Bowl that year against Missouri because he struggled so much. So he was a forgotten guy last year until the Simmons injury, because when Donovan Jackson went from guard to tackle, Hinsman was inserted at guard and played really well. And then when McLaughlin got hurt, he moved back to center and played really well. So I think he has a chance to be a really solid player. I'm trying to think of the wide receivers. Carnell Tate, he's going to play second fiddle to Jeremiah Smith again, but he's a star in his own right. So this is his third year, so I would expect him to be a guy that would be, I'm guessing right now, second-round caliber. But
wow.
But if he has a good year, could be a first-round guy. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, whenever he comes out, will be, I would assume, the first non-quarterback taken, and maybe the first player taken anyway. He's that good. The other one is the tight end, Max Clare, transfer from Purdue, who was, Purdue was awful last year. They were awful, but Clare was by far their biggest weapon in the passing game, and he had a nice catch in the spring game on Saturday. He's a guy that they think really could be a star in this system. So, it's not going to be 15 guys next year, but there'll be a handful of guys that are going to be certainly potential first-round picks. And, the funny thing about this year's class is that probably none of them are going to go in the first half of the first round. It's all going to be middle to late first round, and then there's going to be until maybe the fourth or fifth round, just a run of Buckeyes.
Absolutely. Bill, always detailed, always complete. He writes for the Dispatch. Anything else, Bill, you mentioned the book you're in the process of writing about this year. Anything else that you've written or out there that you want to promote specifically for our listeners?
No, I'm just immersed in book stuff right now. This was a nice break from that. So, if there are Ohio State fans in your audience, that book will be out in late fall.
What's the title, Bill? We didn't get the title from you.
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I have to figure that one out. But it's a great story. I hope I don't screw it up, but it's an amazing story. Nobody's ever had a run like that in college football history, to have come from the depths that they did after Michigan to win the championship like that. So I've just gotten through writing the Michigan game, so the good stuff comes now.
Wow.
Well, Bill, I know if you're looking for a break from book stuff, I'm sure a guy will enter the transfer portal any minute now, and you'll have something else to write about. Don't worry about it.
Always nice to be on with you guys every year.
Always a pleasure, Bill. Thanks you so
Bill.
much, and we'll talk again soon. Bill Rabinowitz, he covers Ohio State Buckeyes for the Dispatch. The transfer portal stuff is crazy.
Don't wish that on him.
No, I was making
He's going to be delayed by like 2 weeks if they bring in 4 guys.
We have not seen anyone pick up that Tennessee quarterback yet, have we? Has anybody seen that? Has anybody picked him up?
Not that I saw.
Right?
Not that I saw, no.
It's basically free agency now, except that there's no contract, so guys could just leave whatever they want.
Oh, yeah.
You wonder why some of these guys are looking to get out of college football and get into the pros.
Man. Or into television.
Or that. Correct. 100%. All right. 201-939-4513. We'll get to your calls in just a moment. Just a reminder, folks, you can go check out the Giants Podcast Network feed that has the Giants Huddle Podcast and draft season on there. Tony Poloni and I just recorded draft season today. It's posting tomorrow. We do our first-round graded players, sleeper players. Then we did about 18 questions from fans, too. So make sure you go check that out. That's on that same podcast feed. Just search for draft season, giants.com/podcast, the Giants app. And then we're continuing to grind out these huddles. A lot of good stuff coming your way. Bruce Feldman went up on Monday. We talked about his only mock draft of the year every year, but what he does, he talks to college coaches that went against these players and gets really good information from them about game planning for them and stuff like that. So make sure you go check out that episode. We're going to have Nate Tice coming up soon. We're going to have Chris Sims coming up soon. Thomas Dimitrov should be coming up soon. So we have a lot of good guys. Brian Broaddus, former NFL scout, he's coming up later in the week. So a lot of really good stuff coming your way in the Giants Huddle podcast. Make sure you go check that out. All right, let's go to the phones. 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. We'll take your calls in the order in which they were received. So we'll start off with Wilson in Rochester. Wilson, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey.
Johnny, Paulie, how are you?
We're good.
Listen, Johnny, the Giants are the gift that keep on giving for all the wrong reasons. I mean, you can't make this up.
They haven't done anything, Wilson. They haven't done anything in 3 weeks.
Let me tell you. You know, when you win 9 games in 2 years, you can make all the excuses in the book and whatever, how they is. Yeah, injury, Daniel was horrendous, blah, blah, blah. The thing is this, a lot of, when you win 9 games in 2 years, a lot of people think that,
we know what the last 2 years have been, Wilson. What's your point?
Okay. My point is this, that the reason why you're in this predicament is because, they're so dysfunctional. Because if the rumors are true, and I don't know why they wouldn't be, that the Giants are holding a private workout for Shedeur Sanders, they you know what tells Giants fans like me? that their right hand doesn't know what their left hand's doing, Johnny.
That doesn't make any
so
sense,
much-
Wilson. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
How
Because,
are you
Johnny-
connecting these dots? Explain to me your logic on this one, Wilson.
Okay, Paulie, I explain to you why. Why would you want to have a private workout where the player that you already went to the pro days, you have like 100 games filmed.
Wilson,
That
they
tells you
do
that
private workouts with every single quarterback.
Okay. All right. That's it. It does. So
And Abdul Carter.
The realm of the possibility that there's something that in the building, not everybody's on the same page. So
Wilson, why are you
Oh, my
taking the
goodness.
Mike Tannenbaum tweet and making it fact? I know where you got it from. You got it from Mike Tannenbaum, because he tweeted that this morning.
I don't even know what Twitter is. I mean, I'm not.
Okay, fine. So Mike Tannenbaum said it on ESPN then, whichever one you want to look at.
I was working. I'm just saying this because why would you do that? They're not going to draft the quarterback, Johnny. You know.
Okay, hold on a second.
Johnny.
Wilson, a couple things. One, there are other players at Colorado you might want to get a second look at too, by the way. Like, he's not the only guy out there.
I didn't think about that. I'm just saying this, Johnny, you know, and Paulie knows that they can't draft the quarterback. Johnny, the Giants fans like myself will go crazy.
Okay, Wilson, Wilson, appreciate the call. I don't know how many times we can have the same conversation. You need a quarterback that's going to be under contract past 2025. You want a young developmental guy in the building that you think has ability to become a really good player. Do they think Shedeur Sanders is worth the third pick? I have no idea. Paul has no idea.
No,
but you have to do, and we've talked about this a million times before. Even in years when they weren't looking to draft a quarterback, they would do extensive work on the quarterback.
Every time.
So every year.
Every time.
Even after that great Daniel Jones year where they ended up, signing him to the extension, they did work on the quarterback. So down the road, you have a better year for these players moving forward. This is not some panic. We don't know what we think about Shedeur. We need to, do a private workout with him. That's not what this is. By the way, these guys' schedules have all been crazy too. They've been doing 30 visits for the last week. Before that, they were at all these pro days. They, according to reports, were at Penn State to talk to Abdul Carter. There's only so many days in the calendar, so you can only fit in these workouts when you can. Shedeur's been visiting teams as well. He's been doing workouts. The Giants have been, again, having all the 30-visit guys in. They were at a bunch of pro days for a span of we didn't see Joe Schoen here for, 10 days?
I was going to say 2 weeks, just about.
Going from pro day to pro day. And then you don't want to have more than 3 or 4 or 5 30-visit guys in on the same day. So that's another week that gets shot because you're doing the 30 visits. And they're also, by the way, have all the scouts in the building the last 12 days, 13 days, 2 weeks, putting the board together.
Mm-hmm.
So what, you're going to take Joe Schoen and whoever's going to this private workout out of the draft room, putting the board together to go do a private workout? It's just a matter of getting the timing right. This is not, one guy thinks this, one guy thinks that. We don't know what we think. We better go see him in person and that'll decide it. That's not what this is. It's just part of their larger process that they do with all of the quarterbacks. And again, he's not the only player that plays for Colorado, too. So who knows what else they're doing out there. We just know what got reported. I don't know what else they're doing out there, but there are more than one player that plays for Colorado that are draftable.
Wilson, I'm going to step out of the box here just a little bit for you, too, because I think it's important. Maybe it'll help you understand better and not have you overreact to some, hypothetical scenario. In this particular case, this is not a player who has been invited to the Giants campus to do a workout, to do an actual visit. This is a case where Colorado, Deion Sanders, invited a bunch of teams who were very high in the draft to come out and do a private workout with the quarterback. Now, it seems to me, if you're going to do your due diligence, regardless of whether or not you are going out there with the intent to take the player or not, your due diligence says you have a responsibility. If you've got the invitation and they're telling you, we're welcoming you, and by the way, these other handful of teams, we are welcoming you out here to come and do this private workout. Why wouldn't you take it?
Is it multiple teams that are going after this?
I believe they're individual workouts, but there are multiple teams who are invited.
I gotcha. Okay.
So why would you not go? Information is good.
And we've talked about with quarterbacks how important these one-on-one situations are. You want to maximize them as much as possible. So if the opportunity to do this, you're going to do that. Guys, trust me. It has been part of the Giants' plan to have a private workout with Shedeur Sanders since this process began.
Mike Garafolo said that, by the way, on NFL Network this morning.
Oh, did he? Well,
yes.
I didn't even know that.
He did.
It's just logic, a common sense. Joe Schoen and Brian Dable have talked about how important the private workouts are. We played their audio from the owners' meeting, right? We had Dan Salmon on from the owners' meeting. He talked about it, how the private workouts for the quarterbacks are even more important than the pro day stuff, which is kind of useless in a lot of ways because it's a pre-programmed script, right? So they were going to try to get this done one way or the other. It just turned out that this is the part of the calendar that it worked. So this is when they're doing it.
This is all part of the standard operating procedure for this administration. As John said, and I think it's probably one of the most valuable things you just said a minute ago, is that even when they had their quarterback and they gave Daniel Jones the extension, they did thorough research on like the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft that year. This is their SOP.
Right. And the reason I said to Wilson what I said, Mike Tannenbaum posted this morning, retweeting the ESPN source from Schefter about the private workout, that when this happens so late in the process, either there's a big disagreement in their building on their evaluation or they're reacting to new information. In this case, that's not true.
I'm gonna reverse this whole question to you, Wilson.
Because I don't think this was a last-second thing. I think this is just when the scheduling happened.
That's what Mike Garafolo said this morning on NFL Network.
Oh, see?
He said this was...
Mike and I are on the same page.
He said,
I didn't even know we said that.
He reported on NFL Network that this was actually scheduled quite a while ago, and it just happened to come out now.
That's not surprising at all.
This was when both Colorado and the Giants could fit it in. That's it. This is not like something that came up at the last minute.
I wasn't reporting that. That was just common sense to me, but that makes sense.
NFL Network put that out. So I'm not reporting it either. I'm simply telling you what Mike had said.
Yep.
And certainly it made a lot of sense to me. I think here's the thing that I would ask you, Wilson, and anybody else who wants to be critical of this front office and this personnel department. What would you have said if it had been found out that Colorado had offered the Giants, among other teams, an opportunity to visit and work out with the player, and they declined and did not go? Then what would you say?
And then worst comes to worst, they don't draft the player, somebody else does, and he turns out to be really good.
So now, what's that side of the conversation?
It'd be pitchforks, flaming arrows, and spears is what it would be.
How about full containers of dynamite?
Yes, correct. So
you got to go.
Don't overreact to the news of the day, Wilson. We tell you that all the time. Don't overreact. We love you. I love you too, Wilson. All right, let's go to Jim in New Jersey. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hi, Jim.
Hey, John. Hey, Paul.
Hi.
I think the lesson here is Giants fans never go full Wilson. So you get that second free.
You don't want to go full Wilson, and you don't want to go full Charlie, Jim. Those are the two things you want to avoid.
Well, I'm the anti-Charlie, So, but anyway, look, John, Paul. I'm, in a situation where, as a fan, I don't want to propose stuff that I think is silly or unrealistic.
I appreciate that.
And I want to be supportive. Like Joe and Dave's are they're like the fugitive right now. So I am really hopeful that what they're going to do is go Carter and Williams at 3 and 34. And then my hope is at 99, somebody like a Farmer as kind of like the pass rusher, defensive guy. So if they do something like that, to me, I feel as though that's going to build my team for the future, whatever their future is.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It feels good to me. But I also feel like for them, in this kind of a draft, which it's a starters, not a stars draft mostly, you're getting one star, a nice starter, and then a guy like Farmer at 99, you're getting a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the thing, John. You mentioned this talking to Wilson, but I've heard you talk about this before. And, and I have a question, it's a two-part question, one for you and one for Paul if he wants to chime in.
Sure.
My thing is 65 and 104. For me, I would love to get the best kind of bruising running back I could get somewhere in the 50s, maybe in this draft. Like he can catch the ball, he doesn't drop the ball, he's allowing Tyrone Tracy to be the spice, not like the steak of the running team, and that matches up with Russell Wilson really nice because you want to have a strong running game. So for me, that's kind of my draft. That's where I'm going to go with those 5 picks, and whatever happens beyond, good luck on special teams. But John, this is something that you've kind of pushed, and I heard you speaking about this with Wilson. I very much respect your takes. I mean, I really enjoy them. But you've been very insistent on this idea that the Giants can't possibly let Jalen Milroe turn out to be the backup quarterback for the Ravens or something, or that Shook needs to be in here and we have to have him under contract next year because we need a young quarterback in the building. And my question is I look at the top 10 quarterbacks for next year projected, and I know these things change. But what's not in there is some 26-year-old with two or three broken bones in the top 5. It at least seems that if your goal is, well, next year there has to be somebody here who's young, I don't see really much of the upside to insisting that 34 plus something, or even 65 plus something, I'm thinking 105 or 99, has to be this idea that we must have a young guy in what looks to be a very weak year for drafting quarterbacks. We have to have him here. Why can't we get the developmental quarterback next year if the team goes 9-8 and Russell Wilson's amazing? Or why can't we get the star quarterback if Russell Wilson pulls his calf and we end up going 4 and 13?
That's a good question.
And we get a great quarterback. I just don't. If you can help me understand why. I look at 65 and 34 and I say, oh, baby, those spots can make a reasonable team that next year when I go for the quarterback, and there I'll mortgage the future for the great quarterback. But this year is a starter's year. You said it, but you're still kind of clinging. You're very we got to get a guy signed in here who's under 22 or 23 or 27 in the case of Shark.
25.
They seem like personally nice. 26. You know what I'm saying?
He'll be 26 in September.
I'll just add that you and I are totally on the same page here. John and I differ a little bit, but you and I are
Jim,
agreeing.
It's a great question, Jim. It's a great question. Let me answer
it. And I love Graham too, Paul. Not to go full Dottino, but I love Graham.
That's all right.
You also never want to go full Dottino for the record either, by the way.
No, there's only one of a kind, and the world's not ready for two of me.
So, Jim, here's why I think this way. One, you never know what next year's quarterback class is going to look like. You don't know where you're going to be drafting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's number one. So I'll take that off the table because I'm not going to count on next year because you don't know what next year is going to look like. So I think, is this a great quarterback class? No, it is not. All these guys that I'm talking about, are they imperfect in sometimes significant ways? Sure. No argument on those 2 points from you. I want to have quarterback is oftentimes the product of giving yourselves opportunities to hit. All right? And I want to give myself an opportunity that, and even if it's a 10% shot, give myself that 10% shot of having somebody in the building that can play. And if he's in your building for a year and you're hoping everyone's back, your coaching staff and front office is going to have a very good feel for that player if they think that maybe next year he'll be ready to go. While if you're drafting somebody next year and let's say there is no walk-in star quarterback even available that you can get, whoever you draft is not going to be ready to go in year one. So now you're looking at another year with a bridge quarterback. I want to give myself a chance next year. Let's say you don't have the opportunity to draft whoever the top guy is, whoever the second best guy is, or maybe that's going to be a Kenny Pickett year where the best guy is a second round player. Who knows? Whatever that year might bring to you. I want to have the opportunity to have developed a young player in my building that I can put in there as my starting quarterback and give yourself a chance to have a young player in here that can develop into your starter. And
John,
yes.
John, can I just say, I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
Awesome. You've said that before, but let me just kind of put a point on it with you, and you tell me why not.
And by the way, Jim, it is painful, by the way, for me to pass on one of these really good players at 34, because I don't know if you listened to the mock draft yesterday. I took Josh Connolly. He's sitting there at 34.
No, it was terrific. I like him too. God,
I could not pass on him.
But that's why I feel so frustrated, because, anyway, what I was going to say is, like, okay, for me, 34, I look at Williams, and I'm like, damn, that is solid. And Tyler Shuck for 34? No. I think Russell Wilson, and I think 65 plus 104, can that get me like that kid from Miami everybody likes, the running back, I forget his name.
Damian Martinez,
Right, Martinez. I don't know if that's the right guy, but, like, whoever that guy is at 56 or 55 versus Tyler Shuck. Now, you can make
but Jim, quarterback is...
For Milrow,
but Jim...
the idea of Milrow at, say, 34 or 34 plus 105 or some nonsense, to me seems crazy. And I just...
No, look, I'll be honest with you. And Jim, am I pushing Shook and Milrow up my board a little bit to pick them at 34 if I pick them there? Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you, but I'm much more willing to do that in round 2 than I am in round 1, where I can get a potential superstar player. I think it's worth the opportunity cost in the second round, because you aren't passing on a guy that I think is going to be a star. And, you know, again, I just think I'm envisioning next February, okay? I'm envisioning next February, and what Paul and I experienced at the Combine this year with the Stafford rumors and everything, and I'm just imagining us sitting here in February next year where Jameis Winston's your only quarterback under contract. Let's say things didn't work out with Russell Wilson, just as a hypothetical. You have no young quarterback on the roster except for maybe Tommy DeVito. And we're sitting here again heading into free agency like, oh man, we have to get somebody. I want to avoid the desperateness you're feeling in February next year, where you once again have no idea who's a potential guy to go in. Now, maybe Shook or Milrow or Dart even. You know, I think there's an outside shot Dart's there at 34. I don't think that's as impossible as everyone else thinks. And by the way, I've heard a lot of noise the last week that Shook could go in the first round. That is not something that I would be shocked by. Just from NFL people that I've talked to. So I don't want to wind up in that situation again. That doesn't erase me going after a quarterback hard next year. You will not hear me say next year, if the Giants draft Shook or Milrow when we're at the Combine, well, I'm not going to trade up for a quarterback. We have Shook or Milrow here. No, I'm not going to say that. These are not guys you're drafting to be your future franchise quarterback with any sort of shorty. But I want to throw the dart at the board because there's a chance I'm going to hit cork. And if you hit cork, you get a bullseye. You might find a Tony Romo. You might find a Dak Prescott. You might find a Brock Purdy. Are the chances extremely low? Yes. Am I counting on it? No. I at least want to be able to throw the dart at the board once in this year's draft. And that's my argument.
He wants apples and you and I want oranges. That's okay.
No, I want to play the quarterback game and you guys don't. That's the difference, which is fine.
And that's okay.
Which is fine.
Because quite honestly, and I'm going to make this clear, Jim, I understand his logic on this.
And thank you for the call, Jim. We appreciate it. Really good stuff.
It's just not my taste.
No, and that's fine.
But I understand it.
And look, like I said, when I did the mock draft yesterday, I couldn't pass on Connolly at 34. He was too good. He was too good. I couldn't do it. A potential starting left tackle, I cannot pass, or right tackle, whatever.
That far?
It was just the way the draft went. Do you want me to show you the draft?
Not now.
Well, at the end, we'll do it real quick. All right, let's go to Scott in New Mexico. He's up next. Hi, Scott.
Hi, guys. How you doing today?
Good.
I haven't been calling in that much. I've been dealing with some medical issues, but I found out I was free today, so that was a big plus for me.
Hope you're doing okay, Scott.
Yeah, please rehab.
Yep. Just a couple of comments. Every year, each team is given the same mandate, which is
win,
get into the playoffs if you can, and then make an attempt at the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And that's the only mandate that you have. As I look at the Giants, I think listening to you guys yesterday, all three of you, it was an excellent analysis. I thought it was spot on for all the players, but the way I look at it, if Abdul Carter is available, he is maybe the second coming of Micah Parsons. And not only is he a great pass rusher, but as you before mentioned, he can play outside as well. And those kinds of athletes come around once every 10 years.
And Scott, just to add to that on Carter real quick, and then you can finish. Bruce Feldman on the huddle that went up yesterday said a former NFL defensive line coach, now a college coach who played against him last year, compare him to Von Miller. Daniel Jeremiah made the Von Miller comp yesterday.
I've heard that.
That is you will not find a better pass rusher than Von Miller. He's that good. Go ahead, Scott.
But I think Abdul Carter even transcends that so far as what other positions he can play. I think they both were number 11 at Penn State, and they both can do things that other athletes cannot do. And so if Abdul Carter is available, I take him. But I was looking at the list. I happen to follow NFL Draft Buzz, and believe it or not, in the list that they have, Cam Ward, and there's reasons why, is ranked 5th among the top 10 players that are coming out of the draft. So I'm not as concerned about the quarterback, but the way you win Super Bowls, and you've seen it demonstrated the last 2 years, you have to have a great defense and you have to have a great quarterback. And if you have those two commodities, you have an excellent chance of getting to the level where you have a chance to obviously compete for a playoff spot and for the Super Bowl. And that's all I look at. As far as Wilson's comment, I think he's a little, I don't know what the word is.
Hyperbolic?
Possibly. But you get so much more for private workouts than you're going to get even in a combine.
Correct.
Because then you're seeing the player up close and personal. You're talking to him. You see what kind of talent
No, but Scott, the key is that you tell him what throws to make. At his pro day, he's doing his program. You go in there and you have him run your offense and make sure that he can do the things you need him to do. That's what makes it so interesting.
It's senseless to turn down an invite to a workout. Right. Senseless. Unless the guy's a 6th round pick and he's saying, "Do you want to come work me out?" Well, maybe you don't go. Okay, but if the guy has any value at all, you've got to go.
And again, this is something that was scheduled for a long time.
You take the invite. You take the invite.
It doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's scheduled for a long time. Those kinds of workouts tell you exactly what you're going to get.
Right.
Much more so than you would get in a combine. And so I think that it's kind of myopic to think that, hey, he's coming to New York to get a private workout. That's what you're supposed to do. And one question I'll end with that I'm a little concerned with. Say the Giants, for example, they have the draft. They draft a great player. In fact, NFL Draft has Travis Hunter as the best player coming out of the draft. Strangely enough, they have Ashton Genty second, then Abdul Carter, and then Mason Graham right behind him. Cam Ward's ranked 5th. Which I thought was a little strange, but Ashton Genty is a great running back, so I guess they have their reasons. And when you look at the reasons they have, it kind of makes sense. But here's my question. Say the Giants next year, I'm just going to throw out a number. Say they go 8-9, just for argument's sake, with the personnel that they have now. I'm a little confused because you hear in the paper it's this year that they have to do what they have to do for Dable to keep his job. 8-9 would be a respectable record, but it probably won't get you into the playoffs. Do you maintain keeping Dable if you're going in that direction, or are they going to make wholesale changes? And that's something I know you guys can't predict. But I'm with the athletes they picked up in free agency, and if they get somebody like an Abdul Carter, and with the receivers they have, the running back they have, although they'll probably need another one, do they have the potential, or do you see there'll be a change at that point? And I'll be glad to take the answers off the air, guys.
Thank you, Scott. Like you said, that's a hypothetical. That's a really tough thing for us to look ahead. It depends how the season goes, what do the games look like, how do the players develop. There's a bajillion things that go into that equation that it's impossible for us to answer today. But if they jump all the way to 8 wins, it's pretty good.
Well,
you're almost tripling the win total from last year.
Logically speaking, if you go from 3 to 8 wins, logically speaking, it means your team improved a whole heck of a lot.
Correct.
And what's the requirement that the owner has set down? I got to feel better about the team. I want to see significant improvement. I need to feel a heck of a lot better than I did this year. Well, chances are, reasonably speaking, that would qualify.
I think it would give him a shot, for sure.
That would qualify.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, final call of the show. Raheem in the Bronx. Raheem, what's going on, man?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear, man. What do you got?
Thanks for taking my call, guys. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. How are you?
Good. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the draft prospects. Haven't called in all year, and I try to do mock drafts just to familiarize myself with the prospects. I know Paul can't get enough of them, but
Sure.
What I would do, I'm with Paul. I like Mason Graham. I wouldn't take Shador. The only quarterback I would take with the third pick would be Cam Ward, but obviously at this point we all know he's not going to get there. So, but I would be fine with either Carter, Hunter, or Graham. And with the second round, this is such a good trenches draft. I feel like that second round pick has to be a guy from the trenches, either the offense or defense. Unless the Giants are really in love with one of these other quarterbacks, there's a slew of players on the trenches that I would really like. I like Josh Connolly, like you guys, but I don't think he's going to get there.
I agree.
I like Derek Harmon. Don't think he's going to get there.
I agree.
He will not.
I like Tyler Booker as well. Again, don't think he's going to get there.
I think you have a shot at either Tyler Booker or Donovan Jackson being there. I think you got a shot at one of those two. It's going to be tough, but I think you have a shot.
Okay. Close.
But
I think it could be very close.
John. I've liked Tyreek Williams from January. Like, I watched some cut-ups of him, and he impresses me a lot. And I think he'd be a really good fit next to Dexter. And really,
who was that?
Tyreek Williams. And the thing about Tyreek, Raheem, he's such a safe player. You know what you're getting.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan.
And in a draft class like this, a team in the late 20s might decide, you know what? We don't trust any of the other guys. We know what we're getting with Tyreek Williams. We're just going to take him. And I would totally understand that posture, too.
He is such a plug-and-play player.
Yep.
It's not even funny.
He's a good football player.
All right, so I just wanted to get you guys' opinions on a couple of players in the later rounds.
Sure.
So in the third round, if, say, in the first pick we don't get Carter, we go with someone else. A guy I really like, he's more of a traits guy, but Kyle Kennard.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's kind of an underrated player. I feel like he could be a steal in the third or fourth round. Not sure exactly where he's supposed to go, but if that's the area we could get him, I feel like he'd be a really good complement to the front. And also,
I think he's a third-round pick. Yeah. Who's your second guy?
And Anthony Belton. Also, I'm not sure where he's supposed to go, but he impresses me a lot. I really like his balance and his feet for a tackle. And then one more guy, in case we can't get any of those guys, I don't know if you're watching the film on him, but Jack Nelson from Wisconsin, he's another guy that impresses me with his balance. He'd probably be a later round guy, but I feel like he could be a work in progress guy like Kubas was last year.
Thank you, Raheem.
I'll take your answers up there. Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate the call, man. I have not watched Nelson on tape yet. I believe he was at the Shrine Bowl, Nelson. I think he did a pretty good job there, but I have not watched him on tape. As for the other guys, Kyle Kennard, I can bring up my notes on him. I have him as a late second, early third round type of guy. Just a really good football player. Remember, he got voted the Bronco Nagurski Award winner, which is the best defensive player in all of college football. His NFL Combine testing was not spectacular. It was fine. It wasn't bad, but it was fine. It was okay. Not super explosive or play with a ton of power. Okay bend, good hand movement, good against the run, has good length, good backside pursuit against the run, plays the read option well. This is what I have in my summary. Lighter edge, plays with good length, speed, hand usage, and inside counter to get to the quarterback. Not overly physical on the edge, but has good run game instincts. Third round type of player.
I thought he played high too much. I didn't like his shedding ability very much. I did like his pursuit. I did like his length. But I agree that he's a third round kind of player. I would agree with that. I would say this. It's funny. I did over 170 players, and you picked two guys on the back end of your list that I did not do. I did not do Nelson, and I do not do Belton.
Belton, I did not watch. Belton, I saw at the Senior Bowl. I think he's a guy you might have to move into guard, to be totally honest with you. I'm not sure he's going to stay out there at tackle. He's a bigger guy. His feet are pretty good. He had a good Senior Bowl week. I think you might have to move him into guard, though, which is going to be a big theme on day 2 of this draft. Tackles moving into the guard spot. And I think Belton will probably be around 4-ish, 5-ish type of guy.
I'm thinking if you want to get a guy on the inside, and I've mentioned this guy to John, and I think you were good with it, Miles Frazier out of LSU.
Yep, I like Frazier.
I think he'd be a really nice fit in that neighborhood.
Early day 3 pick.
Yeah.
I probably like Frazier a little bit better than I like Belton as a guard.
You know, I'm thinking 4th round.
Yep.
You can get Miles Frazier would be nice value there, and I think he can compete. I mean, I really do.
Yeah,
I think he can compete. But that's my appetite, and I've been saying that about him before.
All right, that's all the time we have for a Big Blue Kickoff Live on this Wednesday, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. A reminder, tomorrow we hope to be on at exactly 12:30, but that might shift a little bit, maybe a little earlier, or more likely a little bit later, depending on how long Joe Shane's draft press conference goes at noon. We'll be streaming on the app, the website, also on YouTube tomorrow. Paul and SciTac for sure. I might decide to pop on to just talk about what Joe. I like to put my Joe Shane translator on and give you guys the best analysis I can. Make sure you check that out.
Here's what we do, John. We get those 3 little crumbs and we try to make a piece of toast out of it.
Yes, that's what we try to do. Pearson, today is what huddles today? Draft season's today? Okay, so draft season's coming up today. Nate Tice tomorrow. Make sure you go check that on the Giants app and podcast platforms everywhere in the Giants Podcast Network feed. For Pearson Butler, Johnny Mack, excellent work. Paul Dottino, I am John Schmelk. We will see you tomorrow for Joe Shane's press conference reaction right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better.